All right. So this video, I'm going to talk about a couple things. I'm going to talk about number one, preparing for the storm ahead. And then I'm going to jump into blood pressure. I'm going to talk a bit more about what is blood pressure, what do the numbers mean, why it's so important, and I'm going to talk like actual strategies, what we actually need to do something about it. So number one, I want to talk about the idea of preparing for the storm because in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He says, people do not rise to the occasion, they fall to the level of their systems and preparation. And this adds credence to the whole quote of failing to prepare is the act of preparing to fail. Like 10,000 years ago, we as a species were very much left to the random whims of the weather, right? People would die by the dozens, hundreds, thousands, or several hundred thousands at a time whenever there was like a hurricane, a tsunami, or an earthquake. And over time, we as a species developed systems in place to protect from these events. Now we also have technology systems in place to predict weather patterns in advance with quick response times when the patterns change, as well as with relative accuracy, right? Like it's usually pretty spot on at this point, along with ways to detect when another earthquake might appear or when a volcano might erupt, right? And we have alarms to sound when a tsunami is developed, and we like Japan, the country of Japan has more than 10,000 earthquakes a day. And over time, they developed structural patterns to overcome these events. Their entire civilization doesn't come crashing down every single time that earthquake comes off, right? And because of these systems of preparation made in advance, we can now avoid these overwhelming catastrophes. We are no longer at the mercy of the weather. But when you zoom in to the micro level of the individual human being, we fail to enact these same principles. Some outright refuse to do so and then continue to blame money, work, time, other people, or just their circumstances as to why they're not getting the results that they want. They are at the whim of their circumstances or the weather. And they use their circumstances to rationalize their shitty choices that ultimately keep them stuck. And these are the people where no matter what, there always seems to be something going on. They are always coming up with some sort of reason that's keeping them from where they want, right? They go, oh, I'll just wait until blank happens and then I'll be ready. I'm going to wait until life calms down. Then I'll have the time, right? And there's always something that they can cling to justify not doing the necessary things for the change that they ultimately want. They refuse to adapt. They refuse to plan. They refuse to prepare with better systems to become more self reliant, more self sufficient, or better to depend on themselves against the coming storm. And so they go round and round and round, hoping that by random chance, life will just fall into place, the stars will align. But that's not how it works. That's not how life works. It's not how it's ever worked. You need to be intentional about the pieces in place. You need to be intentional about putting your life together, not just wing it, not just wait and hope for the pieces to fall into place for you. You need to live your life with intention, putting the systems and organization in place to survive the coming storms. You need to intentionally work towards building the infrastructure that supports the goal that you want. This is why a lot of the questions that I ask right at the beginning of any relationship I have with my clients is, who do you want to be and how does that person live their life? Because that person, that version of you that you want to be, does not live a life that you currently live. If they did, they would have the results you currently have, right? That person lives life differently. Their day-to-day habits and systems and routines are different from the ones that you have now. And the biggest one, the easiest one is meal prepping, right? Like a lot of people just won't meal prep. They won't track their macros. They won't do this. They won't do that. And then they wonder why they're not unable to reach the result they want. One of the easiest ways to go about this is simply just take a zoom out. Like, look, grab a physical calendar, 30-day calendar, and look at the weeks ahead and plan. Circle in when the barbecues, the weddings, the parties are, and then come up with a plan to navigate them. Have a plan going into these events. Have a plan going into the week and the months and the days, and understanding that, like, hey, look, this thing is an obstacle. And normally, when I go to a party, when I start, I can't stop. Like, I'm just so ravenous that I cave and eat everything in sight. Or I'm the kind of person who, you know what, I have a wedding to go to tonight. I'm going to starve myself all day to make room for the calories there. And then they get there and they're so ravenous that they eat themselves to being sick. And then they're disappointed in themselves and they hate themselves, right? Like, because they just didn't have a plan going into it. They never actually sat down and went, hey, this is where I'm weak. This is where I typically fall off. This is where I typically struggle. What can I do about that? Right. So at this point, understanding where your weaknesses are and work on them. Not, I'll do it when I feel like it. At this point, you know that your mind will always try to whisper in your ear to stay the same, to fall back on old behaviors that just keep you stuck, and to not follow through with those necessary changes that you know you need to make. Leaving things up to chance and randomness and the whims of your random thoughts, or just when I feel like it or whenever I have time, then you're going to continue to always think that way and you're going to continue to struggle. You need to get out of your own way and become more intentional with your decisions and intentional about how you want to live your life and intentional about your systems of preparation. Put these things in place, set alarms, set routines, ask people for help, and figure out a way to put systems in place that allow you to succeed, that make it easier to succeed. A lot of people like to say, oh, just willpower. Like, you don't want it bad enough, or you just need to want it more. Be more disciplined. Like, no, you don't need willpower. You don't need more discipline and you don't need more motivation. What you need is develop systems to make it easy. If you do that, you'll have the systems that actually support your real long term goals, right? They say that discipline is knowing the difference between what you want now versus what you want most. But I actually, like I said, I would actually just rather, how can I make that decision as easy as possible? Like, if I know that I'm going to, that I have a problem with crunchy, salty snacks, that's my thing. So I just keep salty snacks out of the house. And that way I never need to worry about giving into the craving. But by preparing for those moments, you can weather whether or not those catastrophes still happen, such as life. But the systems that you have in place just help you navigate those moments a lot more effectively and help that bounce back and recovery happen faster, smoother. It's less guilt driven. It's less of a pain to try and dig yourself out of it. You're less likely to go back because you have the systems in place that keep you on track, or at least bring you back on track. Right. So that's it. Prepare for the storm. Know what's coming, know your own weaknesses, understand how you operate, where your bad behaviors are, where are the things that you know you need to make improvements on, and actually write down an action plan on how to navigate these things. Knowing that you have these weddings coming up, barbecues, summer's right around the corner, so camping trips, vacations, come up with a plan. How do you plan to navigate that in a way that is a healthy way? Not like, I'm just going to starve myself all day to make room for the food. Like, no, that's not how that works. That's not good. That's not a healthy response. Right. So come up with an actual plan. It could be something as simple as, I'm going to have a protein shake before I go to that wedding. That way I'm not starving while I'm going in there. Right. That's an excellent one. That one worked for a lot of my clients. But yeah, cool. That's it. Preparing for the storm. Understand how to prepare for the things that are coming. Now, let's talk blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, or if you know someone who does, watch this, save it, and share it with those that are in need. In this training, I'm going to talk strategies to help you lower blood pressure to healthy range, why blood pressure is so important to begin with, and understanding why, because blood pressure is known as the silent killer, and it's for a good reason. And then also what those numbers even mean. Now, keep in mind that blood pressure is difficult to pin down because a lot of the times the only time we ever go and get our blood pressure checked is when we go to the doctor. And then the doctor, a lot of the times, will write it off as something called white coat syndrome. And what does that mean? White coat syndrome is basically the nerves you have from the doctor being present increases your blood pressure, right? So the idea sometimes, even if you do it at home, even if you actually do have an at-home monitor, a lot of the times you'll give yourself white coat syndrome because you're just nervous of what the number is going to say. So a lot of the times, people will just like doctors will just chalk up high blood pressure to just being white coat syndrome. This is especially relevant if you're somebody who's already fit and healthy, because you otherwise look fit and healthy, and therefore your doctor's going to be like, okay, it's just white coat syndrome, and then write it off and then move on. We don't want that because that's very unhelpful. Another important note is that your blood pressure can change dramatically on a minute to minute basis. In reality, the thing that matters most is the consistency over time. Consistency consistency seems to be a very recurring theme when it comes to health and fitness. Hey, before we get into that, before we really dive into it, I want to tell a quick story, because the whole reason up until COVID really helped, really brought this to light, is the dangers of high blood pressure in even healthy individuals. Um, because I wasn't really paying much attention to it until around COVID started. And I started hearing stories of like close friends or friends of friends or family members of friends who are otherwise very healthy family members suddenly just dropped dead on a dime. Despite the fact they were fit, they exercised regularly, they ate well, they had good stress management techniques, and just for obvious reasons, I find myself to be healthy and a health coach. I help others be fit and healthy. That knowledge raised a lot of red flags. And I'm not saying this to fearmonger, because, you know, it's not to put you into fear that something's going to happen right now. But these are the facts. This is reality. And this is why it really caught my attention, especially because I'm about to be a dad. So I want to make sure that I can live as long and healthy as possible with my children, because, like, as a lot of you know, like, my mom passed away when she was 48. By all accounts, she was barely past the halfway point. She should have almost doubled what she got. And so she didn't die specifically to blood pressure, but you know, a lot of the things that she had a stroke in 2009. And high blood pressure can cause strokes, and so maybe it was related, maybe not exactly, but you know, there's a lot of things that can go into it. There's a lot of factors that could have gone into it, but the idea is that, like, you can take otherwise healthy people, and they're just, and a lot of the times, like, you could it I started seeing stories of otherwise healthy people getting written off as white coat syndrome, and yet otherwise healthy people, they're just dying. And like, this didn't make a lot of sense to me. And a lot of it, you know, like I said, during COVID, a lot of the times, like a lot of the big stressors that were happening in life really just compounded the effects of high blood pressure and stuff like that, right? Um, the whole reason why I want to talk about it is that there's really no big symptoms of high blood pressure. And this is why it's called the silent killers, because it goes completely unnoticed and under the radar. You won't know you have high blood pressure unless you go out of your way to check, right? And it's important to check regularly to monitor the day-to-day changes, because, man, like, if your blood pressure is regularly high, you become more at risk for heart attacks, heart failures, like I said, strokes, kidney disease, which my mom also had, eye damage, and like brain aneurysms, bone loss, memory loss, and like a rapid cognitive decline, sleep apnea, which we all know is horrible for health, metabolic syndrome, hormonal dysregulation. Like, do you want me to keep going? Like, the list goes on and on and on. And I cannot stress this enough. High blood pressure is one of the most detrimental effects on your health. Approximately 700,000 people die each year from cardiovascular disease in the United States alone. Cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in the world by far. It's not even close. The great thing about the blood pressure side of the equation is that it's perfectly preventable. But again, the major issue is that it goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. And people who are otherwise healthy tend to ignore it even more due to the fact that they exercise, they eat right, they're at healthy body fat levels. So they don't have to worry about it. But as I said earlier, healthy people are dropping like flies due to high blood pressure. I have always been very passionate about health, and I've always been your biggest cheerleader in helping you all watching this to try and get healthy, right? So it would be a disservice to you if I don't talk about this. So even if you're otherwise healthy, please do not just assume you're in the clear because the risk is still there. I don't want you to leave your partner, your children, your loved ones early because of this, even though it is very preventable and very treatable. If you don't know about it, it's a problem. And tracking it is very non-invasive too, right? Like it's super simple. You put your arm through a hole, and in less than a minute, you have information that could literally save your life. So let's get into it. What do those numbers even mean, right? Because we always see like 120 over 80. That's kind of the range that we want, right? And blood pressure is basically it's the pressure on like your blood places against your arteries during contractions and relaxations of the heart. The first number, like the 120, like 120 over 80 is kind of what we're aiming for. So the first number is called systolic and the second number is called diastolic. Systolic is the pressure against your arterial walls when your heart is contracting. Diastolic is the pressure on your arterial walls when your heart is fully relaxing. Right. So that's what the two numbers mean. And again, those two numbers can change in an instant, right? Due to like an acute stress. If you get into a car accident or whatever, like if something happens, if a brick comes through your window, like that's going to drastically very much increase your heart, your blood pressure. And like I said, the upper range of healthy is 120 over 80. And again, consistency is what matters most. If we're consistently chronically higher, that is where the damages begin to occur. Acute responses, like to lifting weights, is totally normal and expected. Like it's supposed to happen. This is a good thing because one, teaching the body, hey, we have stress and now we can recover from stress. That is huge. And that is going to be actually paramount to like improving our blood pressure over time for life. This is a good thing. We want this. The problem is the consistently higher than that 120 over 80. So the a common question I get when I'm talking with clients and monitoring blood pressure is when. And honestly, it doesn't matter too much. Just do it at the same time every day. I recommend not right after a workout, not after a super stressful event, and not first thing in the morning, because first thing in the morning, cortisol tends to be higher. You run on adrenaline. And so your blood pressure is just naturally higher first thing in the morning. That's normal. That's supposed to happen. I usually recommend anytime midday or evening, or just anytime you're a little bit more relaxed, typically, you're going to get the most results. That tends to be when I recommend it. No, how? Now we're going to get into the big part, right? How do we naturally bring down blood pressure so that we can, have that healthy blood pressure range? And the first thing is not something that you should do, but rather something you should stop doing. And I'm sure this is no surprise whatsoever. Number one is stop drinking and smoking. I feel like I shouldn't need to touch on these, but I still run into this a lot. Well, like alcohol is considered a literal poison. It's a carcinogenic poison. Just because it's socially acceptable does not change that fact. If you put poison in your system's going to freak the hell out and it's going to go into a hyper stress response. High stress is linked to more than 97% of all known illnesses, sicknesses, and diseases, including high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. Considering alcohol is a substance inside the body, man, it's just going to significantly magnify that problem. On top of the fact that if you have alcohol in you, your sleep quality is basically not like in the dirt. It's not existent, which also leads to high blood pressure, sexual dysfunction, hormonal dysregulation. It rips apart your internal gut lining, along with all the other million detrimental effects alcohol has in the body. I'm not going to dive super deep into those right now, as this is about blood pressure, but alcohol is a huge contributing factor to chronically high blood pressure. Smoking, Everyone's been beaten over the head with this one, how detrimental smoking is right. It increases the acute response of smoking will elevate your blood pressure for about 30 to 60 minutes. And most people are not a once a day person. Most people don't smoke one time a day. Most people smoke numerous cigarettes a day. That's going to release adrenaline, which also elevates blood pressure. You have hot smoke in the lungs. That's going to elevate blood pressure because, like, that obviously isn't a good thing. And it's going to damage the blood vessels themselves. So they become less resilient against high blood pressure in the future. I really don't need to go on. By the way, smoking weed does the same thing because, again, hot smoke in the lungs doesn't matter what you get out of smoking weed. You're going to increase your blood pressure, and if you are somebody who is experiencing high blood pressure, that's a problem. Hot smoke in the lungs is going to scare the shit out of your internal system. It's going to be a problem. So is vaping. Hot steam is even worse. So take that as you will. The second thing that we can do to bring down our blood pressure, again, should not be a surprise: exercise. Both cardio and strength training are incredibly important for regulating blood pressure. Both of them have incredible benefits on their own that work even better when they're working together. They work. It's like a beautiful mash team, like teamwork makes the dream work kind of thing, right? The general recommendations for cardio is roughly around 150 minutes a week of low to moderate intensity. There's also some evidence to support that 2 to 4 days a week of vigorous activity for 20 to 40 minutes in a session can also have a pretty substantial impact on reducing blood pressure, as long as recovery is there, like you're getting good sleep, you're eating well, et cetera, et cetera. And then 2 to 4 days of strength training per week, like 2 to 4 strength training sessions per week. That is going to be ideal for helping with that blood pressure response. But I know that's a lot as well. That's a lot of exercise, and the human body is supposed to exercise a lot. Like, that's what we're meant to be good at doing, is doing exercise, good quality movement at high intensities, across broad times and modal domains are phenomenal. Like, this is how we work on that. That is a lot. I understand that. So just understand that anything is better than nothing. Like, if you can't make all of that fit into your week right now, don't worry about it. Anything is better than nothing. Anything is better than nothing. 1 day a week is infinitely better than 0 days a week. If you can't make all of that fit into your day, I would choose strength training over cardio. Both are vastly important. Both of them are going to do really, really good for you for your overall health and blood pressure. But strength training builds muscle, and that, man, I'll get to later why that can be important. But muscle is considered the organ of longevity. There is a direct correlation of muscle mass versus how long you're going to live. The more muscle you have, the more strength you have, the longer someone lives on average, right? So there's so many other benefits that having muscle and strength can build for you that I would always pick strength training over cardio. But if you can do both, do both. And again, I've had clients drop from a 186 over 119 down to a 130 over 87 with just 3 days a week. It is possible. Yes, it's harder. Yes, it takes longer, but it can happen. And especially if you do the other things on this list, you can absolutely lower your blood pressure with just 3 days a week. By the way, she only trained 30 minutes 3 days a week. So even in 90 minutes a week, she was able to reduce your blood pressure by that much. So if you can't make those recommendations fit, whatever works, whatever can fit in your schedule, do that. It is always better to exercise than not. Number 3, again, this is just it's a no-brainer. It's nutrition. The main thing to focus on with nutrition here is fruits, vegetables, and specifically fiber. Fiber, of course, also fits into the fruits and veggies, but there are other foods like whole wheat wraps, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, popcorn, legumes, legume-based pastas. Like, my wife found like a black bean noodles, and they're high protein, high fiber, amazing. Oatmeal, which is another huge one. By the way, there's a ton of research showing that people who eat oatmeal on a regular basis see more weight loss, greater overall energy, they're sleeping better, all of their health markers are improving, and including low blood pressure. Again, because the fiber. Fiber is a powerhouse when it comes to regulating blood pressure. Now, with that oatmeal thing, there is a reel or a TikTok going around right now where it's like, "Ooh, I hate oatmeal. Want to know why? It's peasant food. It's what they would feed to peasants." Man, and I just, and oh, look, we found a delicious, nutritious food that is easy to mass produce, which allows the peasants or the slaves or whatever perform better. Like, whatever the moral implications are of that, that doesn't make oatmeal bad. Just because peasants eat it doesn't make it bad. Oatmeal's great. The general recommendations for fiber are 25 grams a day minimum for women and 35 grams a day for males, for men. But I would consider those the bottom ranges for optimizing health and blood pressure. There's a good amount of research now that shows that for every 10 grams of fiber that you have in your day is a 10% reduction in all-cause mortality, meaning your chances of dying from all natural causes reduces by 10% for every 10 grams of fiber you have in your day. So I would say that the general daily recommendations are really on the lower end of that range. And yeah, like it's there's an upper limit, so like around that 50, like that keeps going until about that 50 to 60 gram mark depending on the individual, but still, like, that is huge. That is, fiber is not something to sleep on. And please, for the love of God, if you're following someone on social media or have friends and family telling you don't eat fruits and vegetables for any reason, unfollow them or tell them to fuck off. It is terrible, terrible advice that will cause more harm than good. Number 4, body weight, which, it's wild to me that this is considered a controversial topic nowadays. But here we are. But your body weight plays a huge role in blood pressure. And this is one of the few instances that I do actually mean body weight, not just body fat, because there is a difference. A lot of people want to lose weight when really they want to lose fat. This is not one of those instances. Yes, high body fat is even more detrimental, but overall weight just matters. Even when you look at people who have like a super physiological amounts of muscle, like professional bodybuilders or top level athletes who, especially if they use drugs, you'll also find that they have high blood pressure as well. It's not just people who are over fat. It is also people who are over muscled that tend to have high blood pressure as well. Just simply carrying around that much extra mass creates more stress on the body that can elevate blood pressure. And I know there's currently this big push right now for healthy at every size, and no, like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. Because my question is always, yeah, but how long can that last? Look, there's a viral TikTok that went around a couple months ago at this point, give or take, that like listed like 10 different like body positive influencers that promoted this style of living. They were like, that promoted this like healthy at every size thing, and they're dead now. And I don't want to talk lightly of them. Like, my heart really does go out for them and their families. But body weight does play a huge role in health, and to deny that is just delusional. Sure, you can be happy at any size and you can love yourself at any size. And I highly encourage that, because you cannot hate yourself into a long term positive change. You can love and accept yourself as you are now while still aiming and striving for something more. Please keep that in mind. Next is sleep. Look, if you're not getting at least 6 hours of good quality sleep each night, at minimum, you greatly run the risk of high blood pressure. One of the main reasons why people can have blood pressure, like high blood pressure, is that they just do not put enough priority here. They don't have a routine. They just go to bed when they feel like it or whenever they feel like it, sleeping in as soon as their weekend hits and just completely neglecting their internal circadian rhythm. And they sleep like shit. And just 3 nights a week of less than ideal sleep can give you a hormone levels that reflect someone a decade older than you. And this is why sleep is so critical for overall health, and is one of the first things I address in my one-on-one clients, because sleep is the fountain of youth. It is the foundation, the bedrock of all things health. You can have everything else in order, but if you sleep like garbage, you are not healthy, period, the end. Sleep is one of those things that can immediately drop your average blood pressure literally overnight. Number 6. And this is going to be uncomfortable for a few people. Caffeine. This one actually surprised me at first, but immediately made sense in my head once I heard it. Caffeine can be a serious contributor to high blood pressure, right? Things like coffee, tea, energy drinks, pre-workouts, caffeinated sodas, diet sodas, natural or synthetic caffeine, both of them have this response. If you're looking to lower blood pressure, one of the fastest ways to do that is to consider reducing or eliminating caffeine intake. And it doesn't have to be forever. I have a client who got rid of all caffeine, got her blood pressure to a healthy range, and has since reintroduced caffeine once she got down to the healthy ranges of blood pressure, and it's still in the healthy ranges. Here's where the problem typically comes from. Caffeine has an acute response similar to smoking and drinking alcohol that lasts about an hour, and which, like exercise, isn't necessarily a bad thing in a single hit. Most people, however, have like 1 or 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and then they have one in the afternoon as a pick me up because they're getting that afternoon crash, and so they need another cup of coffee to try and wake themselves up. There are some people who live on caffeine just to function like a regular human being, which, by the way, should be a really big red flag. Like if you have to drink a cup of coffee in the morning before you're going to talk to, like, don't talk to me if I haven't had my cup of coffee. That should be a really big red flag. That should be a colossal red flag that you are way too caffeine dependent. Yeah, that's a problem. There are some people who still drink multiple energy drinks a day. And so rather than a one and done event, it becomes this chronically elevated state, because now we're not just like, let's look at it. Let's like, we're working out, you're smoking, you're drinking, uh you're drinking like multiple cups of coffee. Like your normal is an elevated blood pressure because you're just consistently involving yourself and engaging in these activities that elevate blood pressure. And so of course you're going to have high blood pressure. Of course that's the normal at this point. Of course that's why it's elevated all the time, and that's why it's going to cause problems. That's where the long-term problems come, is the elevated state. The 7th one, and this is kind of counter to what I said. So number 7 is medication. Now, I know I said without medication, which is why it's so late in this video. But right now, there is such a huge push in North America to demonize Western medicine for pill pushing for every problem, right? But like it's baffling to me. Can't wrap my head around this. People will say that they don't want to take medication for the rest of their life. Meanwhile, they're still drinking 2, 3, 5, 6 days a week or more, right? But they have no problem with that. Or they're taking supplements in pill form. Some people take creatine pills. Some people take ashwagandha pills. Some people take omega-3 fish oils, come in pill forms. Like, but you have a problem with medication that can literally save your life. Like, get out of here with that. Like that in this instance, it's stupid. It's ignorant. It's this internal belief that just needs to die. Your life is worth more than your pride and self-righteousness against big pharma. Like, look, I get it. I really do. Big pharma, not on your side. It is not your friend. But when it comes to blood pressure, something that could literally save your life overnight, jump on it. There's nothing inherently wrong with medication. but it's important to understand the application of it. Use it to fix the symptoms, to lower blood pressure, while you're getting everything else on this list in order so that you can come off the medication if possible. That's how you use medications. Like if we look at somebody who's depressed, right? We know that exercise and proper nutrition do more for depression than antidepressants possibly can. We know that. This is like, you cannot refute this. This is documented in evidence, like across decades and decades and decades of research, that proper exercise and nutrition do more for someone's mental health and their depression than antidepressants ever have. But here's the problem. If I tell somebody who's depressed, hey, just exercise and eat right, they're going to look at me like I'm dumb. Because some days, people with depression, just getting out of bed takes 80% of all of the energy you have for that day. It seems kind of ridiculous to expect someone like that to be able to make it to the gym, to be able to go and do proper grocery shopping and learn how to cook and learn how to meal prep. Like that's dumb. That would be really insensitive of me as a coach, to just expect someone is going to magically fix all their problems because I told them diet and exercise are going to help them. So what you can do is if going on antidepressants solves that problem and gives you the energy to get up and then start going to the gym and start implementing lifestyle habits to improve that, then by all means, do it. Then, as you get the exercise, as you get the sleep, as you get the nutrition in order, play with it. Play with the idea of coming off of antidepressants. I mean, this is obviously like, this has worked numerous times with many of my clients, but that's not going to work for everybody. But it does play a big role. But if depression is the thing stopping you from getting to the gym, which we know has a very big, profound positive impact on your mental health and depression, then perhaps antidepressants, so you can pick up that habit, is probably a good idea. Lastly, and this is huge, there's a reason why I saved it for last, best for last kind of thing. Genetics. Number 8 is genetics. As I said before, some people exercise, they eat well, and they have great sleep and wonderful social connections. They have no stress and yet still have high blood pressure. Sometimes your family just has a history of high blood pressure. I've had a client before who was on blood pressure medication since their early 20s, despite the fact that she checked every single other box that I talked about today. And she, like most people, used to love using her genetics as an excuse for her situation, to excuse the shitty circumstances and justify her lot in life where she was. But here's the thing, genetics only load the gun. It is still your actions that pull the trigger. Genetics can play a massive role in your blood pressure, but it's still up to you to do something about it. And you can check these boxes, do all the things that I'm saying, and still have high blood pressure. Well, then get on medication, right? It could literally save your life. So please, 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 please get your blood pressure checked regularly, monitor it, and get to work. It's called the silent killer because you'll have no idea you have it. You can get an at-home blood pressure monitor. You can find them on Amazon for 40 to 60 bucks. It's not much. Fairly easy to grab. It's very non-invasive. It takes less than a minute a day, and the information you can get from that minute could save your life. So, at the beginning, I talked about implementation. What I want you to do is I want you to pick something on this list that feels like the easiest place to start, and then start talking about doing the thing and thinking about doing the thing, discussing the thing are not the same as doing it. A lot of people fall into the trap of talking about improving their life. A lot of people talk about what they're going to do. They discuss, they write down, they think about all of these things they're going to do. That makes them feel good, so they pat themselves on the back, and then they never actually make the change. So what I want you to do is pick something that is easy, the easiest place to start, and then start. Pick something, sit down, write down a game plan, exactly how you're going to start implementing. What days, at what time, set alarms to remind you, and get as specific as possible. Ask yourself the question, how can I make this as easy as possible to succeed? To help with this, I'm also putting together a PDF guide to go along with this training with checklists to help you create habits for each and every one. Now, I do have a lot less practice with smoking and drinking because I don't do that. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to talk about that, but I can talk about what's worked with clients. But everything else on this list is stuff that I have experience with, and I'm going to try to give you tactics to make it as easy as possible to make sure that you can actually win with lowering your blood pressure. And that's it. So tell me below what your biggest takeaways were and what actions you're actually going to take to make sure that you have a healthy blood pressure. And if you know anybody that needs this, please invite them to the group so they can start making the changes too. I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.